Jared Goff, Amon St. Brown, and the Detroit Lions take on Jacory Krosky Merritt, Bobby Wagner, and the Washington Commanders. Now, going into the 2025 season, this was going to be a highly anticipated matchup. We were going to get the rematch of the divisional round matchup of the Commanders knocking off the Lions. Now, the Lions had a ton of injuries in that playoff game this past January. We're going to see them trying to exact some revenge on Washington. Unfortunately, we don't get to see the Daniels versus Goff matchup once again as Daniels goes down. Whether or not he should have been in the game late, that's a conversation for other people to have. All I'm going to say is this: I'm going to miss watching his talents on the field, whether or not he returns later on in the season. I think that really depends on how Washington plays the next couple of weeks, if he were healthy enough to return. And if this is a Washington team that's 4-11 or 4-10, what's the point of bringing him back? So this is still a big game. The Commanders, really, their season hinges on the brink right now, and what they're looking at a Detroit team that does not lose 2 games in a row. They are coming off of an infuriating loss against the Minnesota Vikings. They felt like they still played a decent enough offensive game with the production of Jared Goff through the air, but offensively and their identity of being a balanced team, priding themselves on running the football well, very disappointed in that. I mean, limited to only 65 yards total on the ground when a team in the Vikings, they put up numbers of 142 rushing yards. Goff sacked 5 times on the day. Jonathan Grenard, Eric Wilson, those Vikings wreaking havoc in the backfield on Jared Goff. This is a team that needs a bounce back. I think they have a great opportunity to do that for Washington. It hasn't just been Jayden with his injuries throughout the season. Remember, he was just coming back from the injury where he'd missed a bit of time. Is that receiving core. You didn't see Terry McLaurin out there against Seattle. I really think that impacted how they'd play. Now, if they had Terry McLaurin, would they still have really had a chance to stop that Seattle offense? No, Terry McLaurin doesn't play both ways, but I do think they would have had a chance to sort of stay in that game. If you have longer possessions, it keeps your defense a little bit fresher, and the game could have gone a little bit differently. As the recording of this video on Tuesday evening, it's uncertain what his status for this game will be. I think that this guy is still a top 12, 14 wide receiver in the league. Very explosive, good after the catch. And without him in this offense for the past month, it's just looked like the Commanders are a shell of themselves. They had a lot of success with Bill running the football. You think back to how well he played against the Chargers about a month ago on that afternoon game at SoFi. You haven't seen the same type of success, only 38 yards on 12 carries for him against the Seahawks in what is now looking like one of the better teams in the NFC. Clearly for the Lions, they're looking to replicate a bit of that game plan that Seattle laid out for them. This is a Washington team that is young in the secondary. The Seahawks took advantage of Mikey Sanderstill on a bit of a slot play that wound up as a touchdown. Trey Amos, he's a guy that I was very high on going into the season. I still think he's a terrific young player out of Ole Miss. This is a cornerback that still has a lot of opportunities to bounce back. Sanderstill and Amos will get their chance this week against this Detroit Lion wide receiving core that is up there amongst the best in football. Of course, the vertical ability of Jameson Williams, and then Amon St. Brown, everything he does underneath in the intermediate routes, fearlessness, going over the middle, what he does as an unselfish blocker. My question is, does Detroit really try and replicate that passing attack where they attack these corners in this secondary for Washington, or are they so disappointed with their lack of balance last week and success on the ground that they're going to try and prove that they have a decent enough identity still after that performance a week ago, that they can own that identity and run the football a lot against Washington? I think that a team can get trouble getting into those types of matchups. Just think if you're a Lions fan that watches Michigan football the way Ohio State played them last year, advantage on the perimeter, they kept running the ball through the middle. If I'm Detroit, if you have the advantage on the outside, why not attack and go with that advantage with a great wide receiving core? Sam Laporta, right, coming alive, 100 yards, 6 catches, and a touchdown against Minnesota. he's one of those players when you're double teaming Amon Ra, Jameson Williams, he's got cloud coverage over the top of him. Sam Laporta can get lost within this offense. Also, Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield. This is the type of guy I think should get 4 to 5 targets a game. He's just such a dangerous threat with the ball in his hands that I would say not giving him more opportunities to catch the ball out of the backfield, that's something that they got to take advantage a little bit more. In Washington's front four, now this is absolutely a key in this game. If they have any hope to stay in it, they are going to have to do a really good job. Guys like Eddie Goldman, a guy like Sheldon Day, for example, they're going to have to be stouts and get penetration up front through the middle, because when that secondary veteran player like Marshawn Lattimore, he goes down, he goes on to IR. This Commander team, I think, was really high going into the season about what this defensive line's makeup was. They had a player in Jimmy Newton going into the season, Jerzon Newton from Illinois, that I thought that could really take a leap. Him healthy and this Washington Commanders defense healthy, again, that's a very good unit. I mean, that linebacking core behind that front four with Bobby Wagner, the ageless wonder, and Frankie Louvu is still very good, and a young secondary. This is to say, look, if things don't go the right way for Washington this season, I still think they absolutely can bounce back next year. It just depends on how healthy Jayden Daniels is. That's a concern for now. But as far as this game, I do believe actually that they can do well enough to limit the Lions on the ground somewhat. The question is, though, is Detroit gets one of those crazy explosive runs, 40-plus yards, where something opens up, and then you've got Montgomery or Jahmyr Gibbs just off to the races, because that's what you often see for teams playing Philly, playing Detroit, where they can do good 12, 15, 20 runs on the day, limiting to them only 3.5, 4 yards a carry, and then boom, out of nowhere, there's that explosive run. You go from a tight game, and everything gets opened up just from one explosive. Against Tampa Bay, that was exactly what happened when Gibbs went off to the races, and there's no one on the planet that's going to catch this guy when he's in the open field with a little bit of a burst to him. This is a game that I really have to go with Detroit in, that I believe that they pull off. I think they win by double digits. I understand that it's on the road, but when you look at what Washington is without Jayden on the field, you'd seen it earlier in the season with Marcus Mariota. I said a shell of themselves. I really think that is the right phrasing of it. An inability to sustain drives, even with Jayden against Seattle, that was a sloppy first half from them. And Jayden tried to get things going with his legs. He did have 50 yards rushing on the day, but it's almost like Seattle is fine. You can have that, but we're going to make you pay for every carry that you have. For Detroit, on the defensive side of the ball, you have to be very impressed with what Kelvin Shepard has done with this unit. And you're looking at still a group that is trying to get everybody back, get everybody healthy, and prepare for this back half of the season, where now they're sitting at 5-3. They're in a dogfight. Same record as the Chicago Bears of all teams here. They're sitting there behind the Green Bay Packers, a squad that they've already lost to. They have a lot of uphill work to do to try and get after and winning this division. They've lost more games than they did all of last year. People want to point towards Ben Johnson not being there or losing Aaron Glenn. More so, I don't think that the injuries have totally impacted this defense to a sense. I mean, they've actually looked pretty fine. In back end in the secondary, Minnesota was able to move the ball decently well, but it's more so the ground game than it was the wide receivers. I mean, J.J. McCarthy only had 143 yards passing against Detroit. It's more so the damage that they did on the ground, with 142 on the ground, having a very nice balance to that. They passed the ball 25 times, ran it 29. Those are the type of statistics that Lions want to impose and stay out of third and long. Because on the day, Detroit goes 5 for 17 on third down. That's just atrocious. You can't have a day like that. They go 3 for 3 on fourth, but who really cares when you have that type of poor of a day on third down, because you're set up 2nd and 9, and then it's 3rd and 6, and you get after that Minnesota pass rush. you're really digging yourself into a wide hole. I think it's still impressive. Detroit scored 24 points in a game that they would probably call abysmal. That really speaks to what this offense is. They're second in the league, averaging 30 points a game. In yards, averaging 351 yards a game. Washington, I know they've struggled throughout the season. Still not terrible. I mean, they're scoring 22 points a game. They've been putting up 330 yards a game. So, I mean, realistically, a score prediction here of 30-21, 30-20 just seems to make sense. If both of these teams play to the level that they've shown throughout the season, I maybe would argue that that's a little bit favorable for Washington without Jayden in the lineup. Time of possession really needs to be in Washington's favor. They're going to have to try and run the football and keep the ball out of the Lions' hands. If they can't run the football well, I don't really think they have a shot. Also, because Detroit does take the football away. They've got 8 interceptions on the year. That's 6th in the National Football League. And Washington throughout the season, they've been one of the worst teams in the sense of turnover differential. -6 in the turnover battle. That's a terrible recipe. That's a recipe for disaster. That's 29th. That's bottom 5 in the league. Whereas Detroit, they're top 5 in the league. That's why a team in the Lions feels like they're a bona fide Super Bowl contender and they feel like they should win the NFC this season. Even if they aren't healthy, they still feel like they can play to that standard in that level. So that will be my score prediction. I'm going to take the Lions to win this game 30-20. Another unfortunate injury to Luke McCaffrey very early in that game against Seattle on Sunday Night Football. A 4-game losing streak very much so hurts. It feels like things just went wrong right after that Jayden Daniels fumble against Chicago in the night. It felt like they were about to move to 4-2 on the season, getting everything rolling, then bam, that fumble happens. Chicago goes down the field, kicks the field goal, and then they go down the spiral, lose 4 games on the row now. I think everything is pointing towards it being 5 in a row unless they can have a great day on defense, get off the field on 3rd down, get pressure on Jared Goff, find a way to take the ball away from the Lions, and then have a nice day controlling time of possession on offense, but I just won't see it. So let me know down below in the comments who you see winning this game. Am I a little bit too down on Washington? I really don't think that I am. Or do you agree and you think that Detroit sort of just rolls here to coasting to a road win against the Commanders? I appreciate you so much for watching. Thank you for sticking around to the end of this Blitz with Blender video. Again, I'm Josh Blender. I make NFL and college videos throughout these weeks here, getting you set and ready for these big matchups. We're in November now, so they start to get bigger and bigger as these battles heat up towards the push towards the postseason. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate you guys so much, and I'll see you next time.